Welcome. This is my 3-part mini-series explaining the history of Terra. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Let us begin. Terra, the throne world of mankind. The history of Terra. Part 2. The throne world, the Great Crusade, and the road to siege. When the Emperor united Terra, he did not see it as the end of his work. He saw it as the beginning. Humanity was still scattered across the galaxy. Thousands upon thousands of worlds had been cut off during the Age of Strife. Some had survived with fragments of old technology. Some had fallen into savagery. Some were enslaved by aliens. Some had become psychotic hellscapes. Others had built their own proud civilizations and had no desire to kneel before a ruler from Earth. But the Emperor did not ask the galaxy for permission. From Terra, the Great Crusade was launched. It was one of the largest military campaigns in human history. Vast expeditionary fleets left the solar system carrying soldiers, iterators, remembrancers, diplomats, engineers, and the newly created Space Marine legions. At their head marched the warriors who had been born from the gene seed of the lost Primarchs. The purpose was simple: reunite humanity. The reality was much bloodier. Some worlds welcomed the Imperium as saviors. For human planets trapped by alien overlords, warp-spawned terrors, or tyrants of old night, the sight of Imperial fleets must have seemed like deliverance. But other worlds resisted. Some had their own governments. Some had their own beliefs. Some had survived perfectly well without terror and saw no reason to surrender their independence. The Emperor's answer was compliance. Compliance could be peaceful. It could be political. It could be achieved through negotiation, diplomacy, or the promise of protection. But if a world refused, compliance came at the end of a bolter. The Great Crusade was both liberation and conquest. It reunited human worlds, destroyed Xenos empires, and pushed back the horrors left by Old Night. But it also crushed cultures, burned religions, and forced countless societies into the shape demanded by terror. At the center of this expanding Imperium stood the throne world. Terra became the administrative, military, and symbolic heart of mankind's new empire. Everything flowed toward it. Taxes, soldiers, resources, relics, information, and power. Expeditionary fleets might be years or decades from home, but Terra remained the origin point of all imperial authority. And above Terra rose the Imperial Palace. Calling it a palace almost makes it sound too small. The Imperial Palace was not simply a royal residence. It was a fortress, a city, a government complex, a military compound, a temple before temples were officially allowed, and the greatest symbol of human power ever built. It spread across the Himalayan region, swallowing mountains beneath walls, towers, vaults, roads, landing zones, barracks, and shield generators. It was built to impress, to command, and eventually to survive the end of the world. Inside its walls worked the engines of empire. Administrators recorded the expansion of the Imperium. Generals coordinated distant wars. Gene laboratories and hidden vaults guarded secrets that could doom worlds. The custodies watched over the Emperor. Malkador the Sigillite helped shape the political machinery that would become the Adeptus Terra. But the palace also contained something far more important: the Golden Throne. In later ages, the Golden Throne would be remembered mainly as the life support prison of the Emperor. But in the beginning, it was part of something far grander and far more dangerous. The Emperor had a secret plan to free mankind from dependence on the warp. Warp travel allowed humanity to cross the stars, but it was never safe. The warp was an ocean of emotion and madness, filled with predatory entities and ruled by powers the Emperor refused to call gods. Each ship that entered it risked disaster. Every cycle was a potential doorway. Every act of worship could feed the very monsters humanity needed to escape. The Emperor's answer was the webway. The webway was an ancient network of pathways to reality, used by the Eldari long before humanity rose to power. If the Emperor could gain access to it and build a human-controlled section beneath Terra, mankind could travel without relying on the warp. This was the secret heart of his plan. The Great Crusade conquered the galaxy above, while beneath the Imperial Palace, the Emperor worked to secure humanity's future below. But to build the Imperium, he also needed his lost sons. One by one, the Primarchs were found. Horus Lupercal was the first discovered. After was found Layman Russ, Ferrus Manus, Fulgrim, Vulcan, Rogel Dawn, Rabute Gilliman, Magnus the Red, Sanguinius, Lion L. Johnson, Perturabo, Mortarion, Lorgar, Jagatai Khan, Conrad Kurz, Corvus Corax, and Alfarius Omegon. Each Primarch transformed his legion. The Great Crusade accelerated. Worlds fell faster. Human space expanded. The Imperium seemed unstoppable. Yet every Primarch carried wounds. Some had been raised as kings, some as slaves, some as monsters. Some had been loved, some had known cruelty. The Emperor expected them all to serve his vision, but he rarely gave them the truth they needed to understand it. This mattered most with Lorgar and Magnus. Lorgar worshipped the Emperor as a god, building temples in his name. The Emperor rejected this utterly. To punish him, the city of Monarchia was destroyed, and Lorgar was humiliated before his legion. It was meant to correct him. Instead, it pushed him toward chaos. Magnus the Red, however, was a psyker of immense power. He believed knowledge should be pursued, not hidden. When he learned of Horus's corruption, he tried to warn the Emperor using sorcery, but his psychic message shattered the Emperor's secret webway project beneath Terra, opening a breach for demonic invasion. The consequences were catastrophic. The Emperor could no longer personally lead the Great Crusade. He had already returned to Terra, leaving Horus as War Master, but now he was chained to a hidden war beneath the palace. The war in the webway consumed his attention and power. Beneath Terra, Custodes, Sisters of Silence, Mechanicum forces and the Emperor himself fought to prevent demonic forces from pouring into mankind's throne world. Above ground, the Imperium began to fracture. Horus, wounded and corrupted, turned against his father. At Isfahan III, loyalists within the traitor legions were betrayed and slaughtered. At Isfahan V, the drop site massacres shattered several loyalist legions and revealed the full scale of the rebellion. The Horus Heresy had begun. Brother turned against brother. The galaxy burned. And Terra, once the launch point of the Great Crusade, became the target of the greatest betrayal in human history. Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, returned to Terra and took command of its defenses. Of all the Emperor's sons, Dawn was perhaps the best suited to this duty. He was not glamorous like Fulgrim, mystical like Magnus, or angelic like Sanguinius. Dawn was stone, discipline, and duty made flesh. He transformed the Imperial Palace into a fortress without equal. Walls were reinforced, kill zones were calculated, gateways became death traps, towers became gun platforms. Every approach was measured. Every corridor could become a battlefield. Every defensive line was designed to delay, bleed, and break an enemy that would be stronger than the defenders. Dawn knew the truth. He did not need to defeat Horus outright. He needed to endure. If Terra could hold on long enough, loyalist forces scattered across the galaxy might reach the throne world and trap Horus. Rabute Gilliman and the Ultramarines were still out there. The Line and the Dark Angels were still fighting. Loyalist fleets were moving, delayed by treachery and warp storms, but not destroyed. For Horus, time was the enemy. He needed to reach Terra, kill the Emperor, and claim victory before the Loyalists could regroup. So the War Master came. Before the siege itself, the war reached the Sol system. The traitor fleets pushed inward through the system's defenses. The outer planets, void stations, shipyards, and defensive fleets became part of a brutal campaign known as the Solar War. Terra was not simply a planet waiting behind walls. It was the center of a fortified system. But Horus had gathered almost every nightmare the Imperium had created. Traitor space marines, dark Mechanicum war machines, Titan legions, cult armies, demons, corrupted knights, warships twisted by the power of the warp. Even Mars, the red planet beside Terra, had fallen into civil war between loyalist and traitor Mechanicum factions. The birthplace of the priesthood of Mars became another wound in the heart of the Imperium. The schism of Mars meant that the Emperor's throne world was not only facing invasion from beyond the system, but betrayal from within its closest ally. The traitors advanced. Eventually, the skies of Terra burned. Orbital bombardment struck the throne world. Vast troops landing began. Millions died in the opening stages. The outer regions of Terra, already scarred by ancient wars and imperial industry, became battlefields of fire and ruin. The Imperial Palace stood at the center of it all. The traitor commander, Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, became one of the key architects of the siege. Against him stood Dawn, two masters of fortification and siegecraft. Once brothers, now locked in a war of calculation and hatred. The early siege was a nightmare of grinding attrition. The traitors attacked the palace walls again and again. World Eaters hurled themselves into battle with insane fury. Death Guard spread corruption and disease. The Emperor's children descended into monstrous excess. Sons of Horus pushed forward as the War Master's chosen killers. Iron Warriors reduced defenses through relentless bombardment. But the Loyalists held. The Imperial Fist became the backbone of the defense. Blood Angels fought with terrifying nobility beneath Sanguinius. White Scars launched rapid counterattacks under Jagatai Khan. The Custodes defended the deepest sanctums. The Sisters of Silence fought against witchcraft and demonic manifestations. Ordinary human soldiers, often forgotten beside the legends of Primarchs and Space Marines, died in numbers too vast to comprehend. Every hour was bought with blood. And all the while, the Emperor remained bound to the Golden Throne, holding shut the wound Magnus had torn beneath the palace. That is one of the great tragedies of Terra. At the moment his sons needed him most, the Emperor was trapped in a war no one could see. The siege became more desperate with each passing day. Great walls fell. Spaceports became slaughterhouses. Titans jeweled across ash-choked battlefields. Demons clawed closer to reality. The palace, once the shining symbol of a rational empire, became a burning maze of corpses, rubble, and prayer. The imperial truth was dying. Men and women who had once been told there were no gods now faced demons screaming beneath broken skies. Soldiers who had been taught that faith was weakness began praying to the Emperor for protection. The first shape of the future Imperium was forming in the ruins of the old one. Reason was being replaced by worship. Hope was being replaced by survival. And at the center of the storm, Horus awaited aboard the vengeful spirit. The War Master knew that walls alone would not decide the war. Eventually, father and son would have to face each other. Terra had been the birthplace of mankind. Then it had become the capital of a new empire. Now, it was something else entirely. A trap. A tomb. and the battlefield where the future of humanity would be decided. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It will help me greatly. For the Emperor!